Or are two truths true? Let's ponder on that question. We now know this to be a map of our world. It's a night image taken by satellites. But you know what? Our ancestors didn't know this. I grew up in India, where there's a strand of philosophy that speaks of a curtain of illusion called Maya. It separates us from reality. To learn is to know. When we know, we are enlightened. And when we are enlightened, we can remove the distinction between our surroundings and ourselves. We see the world for what it really is. Here's our world. It's big. It consists of systems and larger systems of systems of systems. But the world that we see has relatively small objects. We learn how to group them. We group them by texture, color, form, function, properties. We make sets. And then we connect those sets. Those sets become our models. And using those models, we learn how to describe our world. So our world is a learned one. It's a world that we like to know. Think about the early observers of the universe. They stood on solid ground. The stars and the planets appeared to move around them. And so they naturally thought, we are at the center of the universe. But you know what? There were discrepancies. Sometimes the stars appeared to move backwards. The sun appeared to slow down over the course of a year. And so they had to change their model. Their original model was a geocentric view of the world. We were at the center of the universe. But to resolve these discrepancies, they had to develop a model which was heliocentric. The Earth merely revolved around the sun. And that process took 1,400 years, from the time of Ptolemy to that of Copernicus. And look what our refined assumptions about the universe have allowed us to do. We can now travel in space. Satellites can communicate with one another. And we can take that night image of the world with satellites. That's what I enjoy about the method of science. It allows me to part that curtain of illusion. It allows me to remove Maya. I'll give you another example about the evolution of knowledge about cancer, which is the out-of-control growth of abnormal cells. For 2,000 years, physicians believed that there were 4 humors or fluids or biles in the human body that were linked to 4 natural elements. And they defined 4 temperaments of a person. And if these biles, these humors, these fluids were out of balance, that led to disease. Cancer, they thought, occurred through an abundance of black bile. But this belief was not a truth. It could not be resolved with observations. And they had to change their model. In the 20th century, scientists learned that cancer occurs through genetic mutations during cell division. But a conundrum remained. Why is cancer so regenerative? Why does cancer have so much growth? And now we think that the regenerative power of cancer is due to a very small population of cells known as cancer stem cells that allow the cancer to simply grow and grow and grow. I had a thought a few years ago could I couple mathematics with biology to describe this cancer stem cell hypothesis? And to do that, you begin with the mechanism. We all have stem cells in our body. They regenerate, they divide, and when they divide, they form mature cells. So for instance, in the brain, these mature cells are neurons, astrocytes, oligodendrocytes. Now, when these mature cells are injured, or they undergo cell death, there's a signal that goes back to the cancer stem cells, asking them to regenerate, divide, and create healthy tissue. The more the injury, the more frequent the signal. The more frequent the signal, the more likely it is that a mutation might occur. If a mutation occurs, and if it survives, you have cancer stem cells. Cancer stem cells lead to a tumor, and that pathway has lost all its ability to be controlled or respond to control signals. So we built a model for a form of brain cancer. We had mathematical relationships for that mechanism. And what we showed is that cancer risk increases with injury. The more frequent the injury, let's say someone is smoking and injuring or insulting the lining of their lungs, chewing tobacco, the stem cells are called upon to repair the tissue. The more frequent the injury, you could have a mutation. And when you have that mutation, it's an oncological event. If the mutation survives, there are cancer stem cells. Now you have a population of cancer stem cells that leads to a tumor that grows and grows and grows. So advances such as the cancer stem cell hypothesis have changed the way we think about and treat cancer. And they could lead to treatments in the future. We know now that in order to treat cancer through the cancer stem cell hypothesis, we need to treat the root of the cancer. It's a so-called dandelion phenomenon. To get rid of a weed, you have to strike at the root of the weed. You have to get rid of the cancer stem cells. But as you get rid of the cancer stem cells, don't harm the healthy tissue. Because apart from the deleterious side effects, you could produce injury. And repeated injury, remember, might lead to a mutation. And you might form cancer stem cells through the effect of that therapy. We've learned how cells might metastasize. A migrating cancer cell is like a seed. It seeks a hospitable soil, which is remote and is embedded within a tissue. The cancer cells, the seed, gives out a signal. Sometimes that signal is augmented by the healthy cells. Once the signal reaches a critical threshold, there's feedback that encourages the cancer cell to grow. And now the cancer cell thinks, I'm home. The seed finds its soil. Metastasis begins. We've learned something about immunity. That when a glioma stem cell becomes a tumor, it's not only the interaction between the glioma stem cell and the tumor that's important, but the entire microenvironment is important because there are signals in the entire microenvironment. Could we use the innate immunity of human beings and augment it to fight cancer? So you see, we look at our world, we make observations, these provide us with assumptions, we produce theories, models, mechanisms that lead to predictions. If our predictions are in consistent fit with the observations, then we can have downstream innovations through controls, technologies, therapies, and so on and so forth. It's important for me to note that scientists are not vested in particular answers. We simply want to know the truth. We want to remove that curtain of illusion that separates us from knowing. And that takes time. To move from a geocentric to a heliocentric view of the world took 1,400 years. And some truths are certain, like the law of pendulum motion. We know exactly how to predict it. But others are less certain and still evolving, such as the exact details of the cancer stem cell hypothesis that has taken us 2,000 years from the original suppositions about cancer. And there are many other truths that we seek to reveal. How was matter and energy created during the inception of the universe? Because it was. What is the exact influence of global warming on climate change? Because you know what? There is an influence. Why is our DNA not an implication for our destiny? Because you know what? We can avoid the implications of DNA through other proteins in our body. How does nature build all these magnificent objects, atom by atom, molecule by molecule, bottoms up? But we, engineers, are limited to thinking top down. We take tree trunks, we take large chunks of material and chisel them away, producing waste. Imagine the implications for sustainability if we were able to do what nature does. So our truths are only as true as the Maya we are able to remove. They're only as true as the facts that we are able to uncover. Thank you very much.